Coming up just around the corner, are the Denver Broncos a real threat to trade up ahead of the Minnesota Vikings and select Michigan quarterback JJ McCarthy? Sean Payton had a very interesting quote that we'll get to here in a second, but I want to start off by kicking it to Kevin Seifert, who covers the Minnesota Vikings with ESPN, and he said this. He said the Broncos are very much intrigued with JJ McCarthy, and Sean Payton said it's realistic to think the Broncos could trade up from their spot at the 12th pick in this year's NFL Draft. We'll dive into all that and more on today's show because I think the Vikings may be in a little trouble if they aren't able to trade up for one of the top 4 quarterbacks. But before we dive into that, guys, I'm asking for your help. Could you share this video to either more Vikings fans or send it out on Twitter? And if you do so, I'll toss you guys a retweet. So just go down there, click the share button, select the X icon, and then click post to Twitter or X. And then if you tag me right there, at Pat Sieps, I'll toss you a retweet and give you a follow back. I would really appreciate it, trying to get this video out to more and more Vikings fans. But let's dive into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host for today's show, Patrick Siepman, and we got more juice around the Broncos possibly trading up for JJ McCarthy, because after his pro day where where Sean Payton did not attend that pro day, apparently they hosted a 4 or 5 hour workout with the Michigan quarterback. So clearly interest is there on the Denver front. But this is actually what Sean Payton directly had to say just around JJ McCarthy. He said, I wasn't at JJ's pro day, but we had a private workout the next day where we sent him a bunch of information, spent 4 or 5 hours with him, and just made him throw all over again. And clearly the Denver Broncos are seriously considering trading up for JJ McCarthy. You know, we obviously know Sean Payton. He's going to want to get that young quarterback that he can kind of sandpaper his game and really turn him into maybe a next Drew Brees for his offense. But I definitely do think the Denver Broncos are going to be calling the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to be calling the Los Angeles Chargers and trying to get their guy in JJ McCarthy, and we got even more juice around that. So Payton was talking about what he looks for in a potential quarterback when evaluating them coming out of the draft, and he says it's decision-making, accuracy, football, and the ability to improvise. You know we don't always get to play in a clean pocket. Those are just some of the things that we will look closely at and kind of make our own decisions. And when I was kind of just starting to connect the dots and looking at what quarterback would Sean Payton love to get his hands on, it's a guy like JJ McCarthy, because I feel like there's this narrative out there that JJ is not the best quarterback outside of structure, outside of the pocket, and I think that couldn't be further from the truth. We showed the graphic on screen multiple times. He has the highest completion percentage out of scrambles in his entire class. He's actually got everybody else beat by a 10 percentage point margin in that standpoint. So I think JJ makes a lot of sense. A guy who can get the ball out and on time and accurately in an offense, very similar to how Drew Brees ran it down there in New Orleans. But this is the bombshell quote that I wanted to get to. And Sean Payton, somebody asked him about, what are your plans on trading up, or what are your thoughts on trading up in this year's draft? And he said this. He said, I think it's realistic. I think it's realistic. What's hard to predict, though, is what's on the receiving end. I think it's good to be Monty, the Arizona Cardinals GM, today at Arizona. So it's hard to predict what that cost is. And yet, I certainly wouldn't say it's unrealistic. We will pay close attention to it. Now that kind of got me to this thought. Can the Denver Broncos actually make a better offer than the Minnesota Vikings? Because they can say all they want. We want to go trade up and get our guy. We want to go get JJ McCarthy, Drake May, whoever it may be. But do you have the ammunition? Do you have the draft capital to go do it? So let's look at the Denver Broncos trade assets and the Minnesota Vikings trade assets side by side. The Broncos have the 12th pick in the draft, and the Vikings have the 11th. But the Vikings also have that pick 23 that they acquired from the Houston Texans. Now, obviously, the Vikings don't have a second or third this season, but they do have 2 fourth-round picks, and they still have their first for next season and their third-round pick. They also do have Justin Jefferson that they could throw in there, but, Kwesi's shut that down at the scouting combine, saying they're going to work out for a deal. So I don't necessarily think the Vikings could throw that in there. But Denver, what if Denver says, we'll throw you 2024 first, and we'll throw you the 2025 first, and a second to go trade up, and maybe they say, we'll also throw in Pat Surtain, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, to Arizona, where obviously they have a defensive-minded head coach, and maybe they could be looking at just getting more, blue-chip prospects on that side of the football. But again, if you're looking at this side by side, I still think the Vikings, if they want to go get their guy, there won't be a team that could make a better offer. And also gets me to this, I don't necessarily think the Chargers would be thrilled to send JJ McCarthy in the division. Obviously, we'll get to a Harbaugh quote around McCarthy here in a second, but he thinks he's one of the best quarterbacks in this year's draft. And I don't necessarily think, Harbaugh would love to send him in the division. But let's just say Arizona's sitting there at number 4. And, the Denver Broncos send them Pat Surtain and 2 first-round picks. I think the Vikings could be in trouble because I think the Vikings have set themselves up right now where they're going all in on one of the top 4 quarterbacks in this year's draft class. And if they don't get one of those guys, it could get ugly here in Minnesota, and they could be in some trouble. We get to more around that here in a second. But I want to get you guys involved on today's show. Are you worried about the Broncos trading ahead of the Minnesota Vikings and potentially stealing their guy? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down in the comment section. I'll make this the pinned comment on today's video. So if YouTube throws an ad break your way, sit back, let it play, and let your thoughts be known down in the comment section if you're worried about the Broncos trading ahead of the Minnesota Vikings. Coming up here in just a second, Jim Harbaugh, JJ's college coach, had some very interesting comments around the Michigan quarterback heading into this year's draft class. And also, I want to debunk a couple of false JJ McCarthy narratives here in a second. But, guys, I got to tell you guys about my favorite sponsor we have here at Vikings Now, and that is Prize Picks. And if you guys head to prizepicks.com/CLNS, use promo code CLNS. We'll hook you guys up with a first deposit match up to $100. And football season may be over, but the action on the hardwood is heating up. Whether it's March Madness or the fight for NBA playoff seeding, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. And I actually have a lineup I'm rolling with tonight for a slate of NBA games. The Boston Celtics are playing, so I'm taking their 2 head honchos in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, taking more on a couple of stat projections for those two. Then also De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey are going head-to-head tonight in a pretty big-time game for the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm taking them more on 5.5 3-pointers combined between the two. Whether you want to ride my picks or fade my picks, I really hope you guys do it at Prize Picks. It is simple. All you do is you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get started now if you haven't already at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get a first-time deposit match of $100. Prizepicks.com/CLNS. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. It made March Madness so much more fun for myself because obviously a lot of these games are blowouts, but it was still very entertaining following your Prize Picks lineup. So I really do suggest you guys do the same. Link for that is in the comments and description of today's show. So this is what Jim Harbaugh had to say around his quarterback, JJ McCarthy. And he said, JJ is the best quarterback in this year's draft. And obviously this was most likely just, him showing love to his college quarterback who won a ton of games and obviously won him a national championship there. But immediately when I heard Harbaugh say this, I thought this was a message to the Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I think he was sending him a message saying, hey, this guy's legit. If you want to trade up to number 5, we will be listening. Hey, maybe you have to offer that pick 11 and pick 23 in this year's upcoming draft. I think Harbaugh and that Chargers front office know they need to build a more complete roster around Herbert, and I think they would rather take 2 really good players in the first round instead of maybe 1 really great player. But I do want to get into just debunking a terrible JJ McCarthy narrative that is out there because a lot of casual fans had this to say around him, just, reading all the comments, reading all the Twitter nerds and what they have to say around, the Michigan quarterback is that, Michigan didn't trust JJ McCarthy to throw on these big-time third downs, third and longs. Well, that's actually just completely farther from the truth. So on percentage of passes that McCarthy threw this season on third and long, he actually had the highest percentage out of any quarterback in this year's class. You could chalk that up to Michigan was a run-first team on first and second down, which is true. But on third and 6+, 17.8% of JJ's throws came on third and long. Drake May was second at 14.1. Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, and Jaden Daniels all followed him. But JJ was by far the highest. And I think it just kind of adds more ammunition to this kind of terrible narrative out there that Michigan did not want JJ to throw the ball on third and long because they didn't trust him. And, a lot of casual fans may be saying, well, a lot of those must have been checkdowns. They must have been screens into the flat. There's no way that they would be trusting JJ McCarthy to make big-time throws on 3rd and long. Well, that's actually not the case. Dynasty X Factor, they tweeted out a great Twitter thread early on this morning, just breaking down McCarthy's game and really just, debunking a bunch of these terrible narratives. And he said McCarthy led the pack in air yards, talking about the NFL quarterback class, per attempt in 3rd and long situations, throwing for 13.1 air yards per attempt. 13.1 air yards per attempt on 3rd and long. In comparison for you guys, 6.4 for Penix, 8.2 for Williams, 8.8 for May, 10.7 for Daniels, and 11.9 for Bo Nix. So this narrative out there that J.J. McCarthy on these 3rd and longs, one, that Michigan didn't trust him, that's just not true. And two, that on these 3rd and longs, it was just him taking something in the flat, or is him taking a simple screen, and the receivers or the running back did most of the work. That's not true. He was number 1 in yards per attempt on 3rd and long situations. And then I also saw this wild stat from JJ, and we've shown you guys his career record since his freshman year of high school. It's ridiculous of him going 63-4 since high school. But not only on top of that, he threw for 143 touchdowns to just 24 interceptions. I think that just speaks to his high volume and his big-time potential that he has, because dating back to IMG, when he only played in 8 games, he threw for over 2,300 yards, and they ran a air raid attack because they had 5-star receivers on the outside. There's no shot to guys like Roman Wilson at Michigan. I think he's going to work out in the NFL. But it's not like Michigan had these big-time receivers like Washington did, like LSU did, where these guys on both rosters had 2 first-round picks potentially for Michael Penix and Jaden Daniels to throw to. And I've always said this countless times on the channel. Just because Michigan didn't ask JJ to do it doesn't mean he can't. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Brett Coleman was going over, just watching a lot more just tape around J.J. McCarthy. He's great in the film breakdown department on YouTube, and he tweeted this out. He says, went over McCarthy tape from the season. First McCarthy throws at Bama. First McCarthy throws at his pro day. He looks like he's in the middle of a mechanical retool to me. Stride length cut down significantly, in my opinion, and he's really trying to become a more rotational thrower, connecting the hips to the upper body, obviously to the lower body. And he said that's a good thing. Obviously, I totally agree. We also know J.J. McCarthy was dealing with an ankle injury, the later half of the year. So I think that's even more kind of just more proof that maybe it was something else was a reason why Michigan wasn't fully going air raid attack at the end of the year. But I think it's just a good, just more ammunition to more, that J.J. will work out in the NFL. But I thought this was pretty interesting from Brett Coleman. But I'll ask you guys this to round out today's show. Where does J.J. McCarthy rank in this year's draft class for you guys? I think he's anywhere between 2 to 4 right now. I'm leaning, as I said right now, I got Caleb Williams 1, and then I probably have Drake May or JJ McCarthy at 2, and then I got Jaden Daniels at 4. But you guys let me know, where do you personally rank JJ McCarthy in this year's class? And if we get any more updates around maybe the Broncos trading up, or maybe the Raiders trading up, or any more reports or rumors around the Minnesota Vikings and this year's draft class, you guys know I got you. Hit that subscribe button. We'll make a video for you guys ASAP. We just hit 24,000 subs on the channel today, so thank you guys so much. I've been really appreciating the support and just overall chopping it up in the comment section with you guys. So thank you so much one more time, and we'll see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.